I want to try and clear up a misunderstanding or two about photons. Yeah? The old Coca tin telephone experiment, isn't it, that kids used to do before they could afford proper toys. I'm not sure how this will work out, but I'll give it a go. I really want to try and clear up some misunderstandings I think most people have about the diagrams that we're given by mainstream science that are a little bit misleading, and it's understandable why most of us get the wrong end of the stick. So I just want to have a go at trying and clear up the misunderstanding, because then we can move on, can't we, if we're all on the same page. Let's start with people my age will remember this old trick of two Coca tins, two cups with a string linking them, and then you talk down one end and the sound comes out the other, and you talk to your friend. Hello, what are you doing? I'm listening to you talk shit. And the sound would travel down the string, wouldn't it, from one cup to the other, in theory. It was never very good, was it? But it worked just about. You're listening to me through this webcam mic. It's important you understand that. This is the microphone. Now, so you're listening to the sound that's been transmitted down this string, shall we call it, it's a piece of tape, obviously, but down this piece of tape to that cup. So I'll just rub my finger on the tape, because without the cup, that's the sound of me rubbing my finger on the tape, yes? Now, with the cup, try flicking the tape. I don't suppose you can hear that much. But with the cup, clearly the sound is travelling from the one end of the tape to the other. It's going in a pretty much straight line. I don't know if it's wiggling like a snake, or if it's like a compression, or if it's like down a spring. I'm not sure. It might be a combination of those two effects. I'm not entirely sure what type of wave it is that transmits down there. All I know is it transmits down there, and it's clearly a wave, because sound is a wave, isn't it? The reason for showing you this was so I could explain that, well, a challenge to you. How would you draw that wave travelling down that string? How would you draw that wave reasonably accurately? I need a ladder. If we were just drawing sound waves of, say, a nice simple tone, you'd say, like, was that nice enough for you? You'd say, well, it's just simple waves like that, it's spread out, don't they? Exponentially, just spread out like waves on a pond. No problem. But the same can't apply, surely, where you're just transmitting sound down a piece of string, can't you? Because the sound is now going down a direct path, isn't it? So now, if I said, well, draw me the same thing, but this time, sound being sent from that cup, that cup, that cup, that cup, down several strings, there to there, from there to there, crossing paths. You say, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that. How would you do it? Should we pause and have a little think about that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? How would you honestly draw that if it was sound being transmitted down a string from cup to cup? How would you honestly draw the waves? Because you couldn't draw it like that, could you? That would be dishonest, wouldn't it? It would work, but it wouldn't be right, would it? Because there aren't those sorts of waves anymore. They aren't spreading out. The sound transmitted from that cup to the other cup, it isn't spreading out exponentially, is it? No, it's taking a direct path, isn't it? From A to B. So to draw that would be silly, wouldn't it? It wouldn't. It would work, like I say, but it would be a misrepresentation of the real wave, because the real wave we know is going down a very controlled path. It's not spreading out exponentially. Yeah. Now the thing is, though, well, we have the same problem when we explain light travelling, from A to B. See, this is analogous of a particle, isn't it? It travels from there, the source, to there, and it lands in one specific place, but it's still a wave, isn't it? Or it goes from there to there, along a path, and it lands as a particle, as a dot. It has locality. It's there, not there, and not there. It's there. So it's landing as a particle to all intents and purposes. If the sound made a mark when it landed, it would leave a dot there, just like in the light experiments. It would leave a mark there, and you say, oh, well, it's a particle. But then you say, no, it's a wave, because we know it's a wave, because it travels down as a wave. It vibrates, doesn't it? So how can it be both things? You say, well, wave particle duality sound, do you know what I mean? Okay, yeah, I'm stretching the point just to get the point across. I'm not literally claiming that sound is wave particle duality. I'm just using this as an analogy to explain why it's difficult to draw how light would transmit from that point to that point if it waves like this does and it lands in a specific local place, analogous to wave particle duality. There's no fair way of drawing how that wave goes because it would look like this, wouldn't it? Hang on. I've got to be honest, I'm quite enjoying it. It's like playtime, isn't it, at school? There's something quite satisfying about being able to draw a decent wiggly line without having to make the effort. Play that funky music, white boy. To draw these waves, realistically, you'd have to draw them something like that, wouldn't you? If there was another set on top of that, starting from there, say, they would be out of phase with one another, but you wouldn't want to draw it like that because it would look a right mess, wouldn't it? In fact, should I do that? Yeah, I think I'm going to do that actually, yeah. It would look really shit, I think. So that would be a more honest representation of waves travelling down as a ray, shall we say. But the problem with that is, even though we can clearly see there would be interference here, constructive interference and destructive interference, it's a lot harder to see where it would be. It's harder to pick out where the constructive and destructive interference is. Whereas if we do it with the other system, if we do it with that, oops, that wasn't very good, was it? My pen slipped. Can you pretend you didn't see that? You get the idea. It's just, it starts to look more like the classic interference pattern. So you see where it becomes quite obvious where the constructive interference is, doesn't it? Yeah. Hey presto, we start to get the classic interference pattern. I think we can all see that, can't we? It's not perfect, but it's clearer than the other one. It would help if I hadn't started in the middle, then that's the start, then go there. So the first wave, the blue, started, that was the starting point, wasn't it? And the other one was there. The second one was there. So no wonder it's a bit lopsided. Well, you can see now, can't you? Look, I've just drawn tits, haven't I? There. So I'm doing me so Isaac Newton the Willows trick there, aren't I? Need me curly wig now. Yeah, so that's the central maxima in this case, isn't it? Yeah. It's got to be the worst drawing I've done for a while, but I'll have to do. So there you go, central maxima there, and the other maxima either side of it. Yeah, I'm distracted now by having drawn a pair of tits without meaning to. But that's easier to see the interference than it is here. I don't know how I would begin to mark, because we're not used to marking interference this way, are we? I'm trying to look at it that way, because with this kind of drawing, it's not as easy to demonstrate interference, is it? We've made life harder for ourselves. So the point I'm trying to get at is this. The reason we're always shown drawings like this is because it's so much harder to draw the reality. If you were compression waves, then these illustrations would be wrong too, but they would be closer than that. But that will do as a substitute for that, as long as the wavelengths represent the wavelengths that are represented here too. Do you know what I mean? As long as the wavelengths there are the same as the wavelengths there, then that diagram is easier to draw and use to illustrate and calculate, shall we say, the interference, constructive and destructive interference fringes, than that. That's harder to draw and it's harder to interpret. And that's why nobody draws rays of light like that. So nobody draws it like that because we would have so much difficulty trying to interpret where the constructive and destructive interference took place. It's easy when it's drawn like that, but that is a misrepresentation of the actual nature of electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation is more like that. It's more like a ray. It's transmitted from A to B. See, this is a contentious issue. Gary, when I first wanted to learn about the double slit experiment and I was new to it, I'd been doing it myself for a few weeks at home and struggling a little bit to understand why I was getting interference patterns from a single slit instead of a double slit. I went on YouTube and I came across, among other videos, yours. And I started to think, well, oh, your arguments made sense. You were saying that the single slit pattern is the same as the double slit pattern, and essentially, and the simplest pattern in the universe, and it's been wrongly ascribed to wave interference. But yeah, and I was willing to go along with all this and take on board what you're saying, at least consider it, and give it due credence, so to speak. Think about it. But when you came to, I remember you used to show us diagrams like this and say, well, how can photons be a particle and yet they spread exponentially as they travel for billions of years or whatever, spread exponentially over vast distances, but then when they land, they suddenly, all the energy manifests in one there or there or there as a particle, as a dot. First thing, yeah, that's crackers, isn't it? But the problem is, Gary, that isn't what scientists claim. And I think any scientist who does think that happens has him or herself misunderstood. I don't think 99.9% of scientists think that happens. I'm not sure whether you really think that happens. I'm not sure whether you are really just straw manning the argument a little bit by pretending that you think that that's what they claim. I don't think that's what they claim. I don't think that they claim that a photon spreads out and out and out and out over ever expanding distances, vast distances, getting weaker all the way. Then as soon as it lands somewhere, all its energy manifests there and disappears from everywhere else it was going. Not from one photon, no. I don't think that's what any of them are claiming. But when you draw this diagram and exploit it to explain the double slit experiment, I feel like you're playing a crafty game, Gary. I think you're, unless you are genuinely misunderstanding it yourself, you were giving the impression that the wave really is like this and that it somehow has to go through walls. I'm not explaining myself very well. I need to just pause. I don't want people to have misunderstandings. If you're misunderstanding it, then I want to try and help clear up that misunderstanding so that you can stop repeating your misunderstanding and giving other people the same misunderstanding, because you imparted your misunderstanding on me initially. It took me a while to cotton on and think, oh, nobody's claiming that light does that. They're only drawing it that way because it's so difficult to draw it that way. You know what I mean? It's difficult to draw light in rays and show interference, so they do it that way for convenience. But nobody's really suggesting that's what light actually does. And I'm sure you know that. No, I'm not sure you know it, but I like to think that you know it. But if you did, you wouldn't say what, or would you? I don't know. I sometimes think that you would deliberately say what you know to be not true in order to score a point. Anyway, before I pack away, yes, I've been doing ripple tank experiments lately, just to show you that I am making an effort that you think